Silence reigned in the attorney's office, the only sounds being the slight hum from the air conditioner and the triumphant tapping of my grandmother's neatly manicured fingernails on the mahogany conference table. Our adopted granddaughter, Sarah Mitchell, will receive no inheritance because she has no Mitchell family lineage. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at the age of 28, I was wiped from the family estate because I committed the unforgivable sin of being adopted. But the Mitchell family fortune must remain in the true family line, my cousins James and Rebecca said bitterly, and the $40 million inheritance would now be split mostly between the two of them, with smaller portions going to other blood relatives. He'd known me since I was a child, adopted me at birth, and watched my parents raise me as their own. But now that both my parents were dead, having been killed in a car accident 3 years ago, there was no one left to fight for my place in the family. It was the Mitchells' property, after all, and I slowly turned my head back to meet her cold blue eyes. Of course, I didn't want to impose on the true family line, and this guest room had been my home for the past year, ever since I'd returned to help care for my grandfather in his final months. What my grandmother didn't know was that on one of my few visits, my grandfather had managed to slip me a key and a note scribbled with an address. I pulled the crumpled piece of paper out of my bag, which read a warehouse on the outskirts of Houston, and underneath it was my grandfather's shaky handwriting. Your mother left this for you, and the real story is in there. My parents only told me she was young, unmarried, and wanted to give me the best chance at life. I drove to the storage unit within days. My mind echoed my grandmother's words. She wasn't part of the family. She'd been using the same words against me ever since my parents died, slowly poisoning the rest of the family against me. An old man was sitting behind the counter, reading a warm paperback book, and as I approached, he asked, "What can I do for you?" I showed him the key and the address where I was trying to find the unit, which may have been rented by someone 28 years ago. She said her daughter would come by one day with the key. "I think that's you." "Yes," I whispered, "that's me. Unit 247 is at the back of the facility, away from the newer units." The key turned smoothly in the lock, despite its age. Inside was small but organized. The boxes were lined up on the wall, each one carefully labeled in neat handwriting. The first one I opened contained papers, hundreds of letters, documents, photographs. "Sarah, if you are reading this, then you have finally found your way here. My name is Catherine Edwards, and I am your birth mother. But that is not the whole truth. There is so much you need to know about who you are and who the Mitchells really are. When he said he was going to leave his wife, I was young and foolish and believed him. When I found out I was pregnant, I suddenly changed. I was a threat to everything he had built up. He offered Memony to disappear to get an abortion. When I refused, the threats began. The next box contained evidence letters, recordings, bank statements, daughter-in-law adopting your parents. John and Mary Mitchell never knew the truth. Catherine explained in her letter that they were all good people. Robert arranged everything through private channels to make sure the adoption appeared to be completely random, but I'm the illegitimate granddaughter of Robert Mitchell, with more Mitchell blood than my cousins James and Rebecca, and I found my phone buzzing with a text from my grandmother. Don't forget to empty the guest room at the end of the month. My grandfather's final gift was more than just a key. It was the truth and the power to reclaim my place in the family, not as an adopted outsider, but as the flesh and blood of Robert Mitchell. The question was what I was to do with the information. I spent a week methodically going through every box in the storeroom, sorting out the evidence, financial crimes, personal documents, my proof of paternity. Catherine Edwards' documents were not only exhaustive, but remarkable. But the most shocking discovery was in a hidden compartment at the back of the storeroom, behind a false wall, where I found a laptop computer. I found a laptop and dozens. "My God," he whispered. "I know they're hiding something, but this," he looked up at me. "Do you understand what you have here? These financial records confirm what I suspected when I resigned, that they've been running a massive Ponzi scheme through the company's pension fund, and that if it collapses, thousands of employees could lose everything. We've brought in a forensic accountant he trusts and an attorney who specializes in corporate fraud, and everything has to be perfect, and the Mitchells aren't going to take it lying down. And in the meantime, I'm moving out of the guest house, as I was ordered to do, and finding a small apartment in the Guelph. Meanwhile, I moved out of the guest house, as ordered, and found a small apartment nearby to announce that the adopted outsider had finally been removed from the Mitchells' home. And what she didn't know was that I'd been spending my days in meetings with federal prosecutors, SEC investigators, and journalists, and that my grandparents hadn't just been protecting the Mitchell bloodline, they'd been protecting an empire built on theft and deception, and he'd been sneering from the doorway, plotting your revenge already, Sarah, and you were pathetic. Pathetic. I calmly gathered my papers and stuffed them into my bag. I slowly stood up and met his gaze. What exactly am I planning? James's smile faltered slightly. We know you were meeting with someone about the family business. It stops now or what? A flicker of uncertainty flashed across his face. He wasn't used to this version of me, the one that did bad things, the one that wasn't afraid anymore. Just remember who you're dealing with, he concluded, trying for a threatening tone. The Mitchells have ways of dealing with their problems, and as he walked away, Michael turned to me with concern. They're starting to get nervous. We need to act. He spoke more quickly. That night I received an encrypted email from one of Catherine's old contacts at Mitchell Industries. The company was getting ready to announce mass layoffs, a move to cover up the missing pension fund before everyone found out the truth. As I was locking the door, the older manager came over. Your mom left you something else, he said, and pulled out an envelope and told me to give it to you when you had time to read the rest inside. It was a picture of Catherine Edwards holding a newborn. I wrote on the back, remember who you are. You are stronger than all of them. Day of reckoning came on a bright Monday morning as my grandmother was escorted into the building by the federal agents her running. The look on her face was one I'll never forget. Her condescending. I stood up and said, I think there's something you should know. I pulled out the results of the DNA test we ran with the sample from the storage room. My grandmother went white as she realized the implications. James jumped up and down, screaming lies and fabrications, but the evidence was overwhelming. It was impossible. My grandmother whispered, Robert would never do that. I whispered Robert wouldn't, he did. And then he spent the rest of his life watching you and the rest of the family steal from the company that he built. So he gave me the keys to Catherine's storeroom pension fund, fraud, tax evasion, intentional looting of company assets, all of which was well documented, thanks to years of careful observation by Catherine. First was just making sure that those of you who stole got a fair trial. The indictments came fast and furious. 15 family members and executives were charged with a wide range of financial offenses. The company's stock plummeted when the news broke, but I was prepared for that too. By seizing the family's hidden assets, the pension fund would be restored and a new management team would take over the company. My grandmother and several others took plea deals and avoided longer prison terms. The judge ruled that as Robert Mitchell's own granddaughter and the whistleblower who exposed the fraud, I was entitled to a large portion of the recovered assets, but I didn't want their money. Instead, I started a foundation to help the employees. A year later, I stood in the lobby of the renovated Mitchell Industries, now renamed Phoenix Technologies, and looked at the employees who came to work at a company that had survived and was thriving under new leadership built on transparency and ethical practices. Michael said that Catherine had been gathering evidence for years in the hope that someone would finally reveal the truth. Have you heard from her? He handed me an envelope, and inside was a letter, written in neat handwriting that I'd seen in the warehouse files, my dearest Sarah. And now that you know the truth, I've spent 28 years of my life making sure that you'd have the weapons you needed when it mattered. And I'll never forgive myself for giving up on you, but I've watched you from afar and seen what you've become. And I know that I did the right thing by leaving those files with you, and that you did what I could never have done, brought justice to a family that thought they were above the law. I'm old now, and my work is done. I love you, and I'm proud of the way you handled everything. You brought down an empire, not for revenge, but for justice." The Mitchells thought they could erase me, deny my existence, and steal with impunity, but they did it to their own demise. That night, I went to the storeroom for the last time, where the aging manager was still tending to his beloved storeroom. He asked me as I handed over the keys. Yes, I smiled. The truth finally came out. "Thank you for keeping it safe all these years." He nodded contemplatively. "Your mother knew you'd come eventually. She said you looked like someone who would fight for justice." Michael and Susan, who've always stood by me. They've been my employees, trusting me to do things right. Catherine is the mother I never met, but she gave me the fine justice tools. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Board meeting tomorrow. Ready to continue to change the world." They think blood ties are everything. Only their narrow definition of family matters. They never understood that true legacy isn't about money or names. It's about doing what's right, no matter the cost.